Joining us now, Shelly Simonds. Shelly, a school board member on the peninsula. She ran as the Democratic nominee for House of Delegates against David Yancey this past cycle, ran a spirited race, David winning for his third term there. And now Shelly Simonds taking on the juggernaut, Monty Mason, trying to be the Democratic nominee for the 1st District State Senate race. That'll be decided once again, all these primaries on June 14th on the peninsula, the 1st District, Williamsburg, Norfolk. Where else, Shelly, is that? Where does that go?
The 1st Senate District includes Williamsburg, parts of York County, and then it goes down into all of Newport News except the southeast community, and it kind of curves into Hampton. It has 3 very large precincts in Hampton. Those precincts were added in 2011, 2012 during the redistricting process, and they really made Senate District 1 a pretty strong Democrat district.
However, in 2013, as you know, John Miller got reelected. Now, he got reelected again in, when? Just got reelected, didn't he? So now I'm confused.
No, once the redistricting happened, he went from winning it by like 51%, and then he went to win it at, I think, 59% of the vote.
Right, that's right, because he beat, in this past cycle, 2015, that's right, I'm getting mixed up. 2015, he beat Mark Matney like 59%. Then the prior one, before the redistricting, he had a razor-thin victory over Mickey Chohan from Williamsburg.
Right.
That's right. Now I got my dates mixed up.
And if you look at the elections, I mean, pretty much every two-way race since then, since redistricting, has been around a 58-60% win for Democrats.
Okay, now, Shelly, here's the question. I like your spirit. That's why I really wanted to have you on. I know you're a fighter. But look, I mean, you're taking on the Monty Mason juggernaut machine here. I mean, the guy's got elected to House of Delegates 2 times. He knocked off Mike Watson in a big upset, and then he handily defeated a pretty good challenger in Laura Overy. He's got a lot of money behind him. You're going to get outspent 9,000 to 1. And, you know, he's got that whole machine behind him. How do you compete in that type of an environment?
Well, you know, I also ran a good race for delegate.
Yes.
We had over 300 volunteers working on my campaign in Newport News. Although I didn't win, I did get 6,000 votes in Newport News. I just re-ran for my school board seat unopposed and got 4,500 votes. So the people in Newport News have voted for me often, and Newport News makes up 70% of the district. So I have to say I was shocked that Monty Mason was just, you know, crowned the candidate by the establishment, because he is from the affluent town of Williamsburg. And we do have some different issues down here in Newport News that I think need to be addressed. So at the very least, me being involved in this campaign is going to really force him to talk about urban issues and maybe become a better candidate.
Well, you're right, Shelly. He was certainly crowned before a vote was cast or an email went out. They just basically said, okay, you're the guy. And that's what the establishment machine does. It's on both sides of the aisle. I don't like either establishment, as you know. I don't care if they're an R or a D. I'm not in favor of that type of hardball politics, basically, where they don't want anybody from the outside coming in and penetrating their elite cabal. So I have respect for what you're trying to do, and I like the fact that you're representing an area that represents 70% of the district. Let's get to some of the defining issues. Let's start with Terry McAuliffe's edict about a month ago in order to reinstate the voting rights of over 200,000 felons in Virginia. The Republican is over it, saying it's not constitutional. Tim Kaine didn't do it. Mark Warner didn't do it. How do you stand on that?
You know, I see this really as a transparency, a clarity issue. I've gone out and tried to register voters, and people are very confused about who has the right to vote, who doesn't have the right to vote. So I think this action really lent some clarity and some publicity to the fact that if you've done your time, that you can vote. And I think that's helpful. You know, I think our state government really has problem with transparency. When I go up to the General Assembly and try to follow a bill, a lot of times it just dies in these House subcommittees on a voice vote. So you never know, how things die. And they make it so complex that the average person can't navigate it. So, I think that making a simple rule about felons being able to vote is good. I also, think we need to integrate these guys back into society. Mm-hmm. We need to make sure that they're invested in our community. And at the end of the day, if they can get jobs and provide for their families, it's going to save us all tax dollars.
Well, absolutely. When you look at the percentage of those that are convicted of a crime who go back, we have the highest reincarceration rate in the free world. So you have to do something. Whether or not this move was constitutional, I don't know. I'm not a scholar, and I've heard two ends of the argument. So we'll have to see what plays out. But I think what you're saying, some of it certainly makes sense. Let's get to genderless bathrooms. Look, there's a lot of parents in Virginia scratching their heads over this and saying, okay, I've got a daughter in public school, and according to what's going down right now, if a male individual would like to shower in her locker room after gym class with a male organ in middle school or high school, they can go in there and do that. And there's a lot of parents like me saying, I don't really want my daughter exposed to this, and I don't want my son exposed to it the other way either at 12 years old. What's the deal here?
Well, this has been a big issue for school boards across the state, across the country. The National School Board Association has been asking for guidance on the issue from the federal government. And, of course, in Newport News, we're really sensitive to the federal government because we've got military installations. We've got schools on military bases. Right. And we've got a lot of military personnel. So we want to make sure that we're following the federal guidelines. But luckily, it just hasn't come up in Newport News public schools. Our kids are very accepting of each other, and, so far it just hasn't been an issue. The big issue that we've been fighting this year is about getting money to build new schools. Mm-hmm. They've taken all that money out of the state budget. There's no school construction funds anymore. Mm-hmm. We're kind of fighting back and forth with city council to get the funding for schools. And if the cities, the localities don't have it, how are we going to deal with this tsunami of 1950 schools that all have to be rebuilt in the next few decades? So, that to me is a really big local issue for our schools.
So how would you impact that, Shelly, if you were in the state Senate?
So a lot of things we can't get done at the school board level. We need somebody in Senate who's going to make this their priority. A lot of it is just calling them out and talking about it. They took out the SOQ funding for construction over the last few years during the recession to balance the budget. Somebody's got to get up there and say, hey, when we open up the SOQ formula for how we fund schools, we need to put school construction back in. And you got to talk about it. You've got to have a goal. And, when I was up lobbying on SOL reform, I had a goal. So when Tad Greason came out of the meeting, I followed him down the hall to try to talk to him about the proper way to reform SOLs. Mm-hmm. When you see Ann Holton, you talk to her about what the proper way to reform SOLs. You have an issue, and you make it your job to talk to everybody to try to build consensus about how we can make progress on that issue. And, when I get up there, school construction money is going to be an issue for me, but also I'm really interested in working on closing this problem with the school-to-prison pipeline. I don't know if you were aware there were a bunch of discipline bills. Mm-hmm. They all failed. Really frustrating because there was bipartisan agreement that we don't need to be having principals report every little incident to the police in our schools. Mm-hmm. But they couldn't get it done. And I think nobody makes it their number one priority. Nobody's up there making kids their number one priority. And I live in Newport News. This is a huge civil rights issue to people in my city. They want to see somebody get up there and demand that we fix this because, It's not a school board level problem. It's a state law right now that principals have to refer anything that might be a crime up to the police. Mm-hmm. And we need to fix it. And I know Republicans are interested in fixing it, so let's get it done.
Well, it's just too much. I mean, every little incident now gets reported to the police. It's overkill, overpoured, and there's certain things that go on. I think you can just resolve it there in the office and move on. So I think I was very much in favor of that. All this stuff in the weeds were perplexed as to why it just died in there. So hopefully, if you're the state senator, you'll be able to make that happen. I got a couple more minutes. We're with Shelly Simonds. She is a Democratic candidate for state senate. She's a school board member in Newport News. She's running for state senate for the nomination of the Democratic Party in the 1st District. That's Norfolk, Hampton, Newport News, and Williamsburg, and that'll be decided in a June 14th primary. She's squaring off with the machine candidate, the already anointed delegate Monty Mason, who's getting all the money. But that's never intimidated you, Shelly, so I don't think it is this time either. I got about 3 minutes. Outline for us a couple of your key differentials, Mason.
Well, I think clearly the most obvious is my expertise in education policy. I've been a teacher, and I've been on the school board for 4 years. I've been very active with the National School Board Association. I'm also the chair. Very aware of what we need to do as we look to reform the high school experience for our young people. So I'm going to bring some expertise up to the Assembly in education policy. And frankly, I'm not sure if we really need another businessman up there. I also think that I can carry on the policy that John Miller started. John Miller was the one who introduced a bill that would have a commission to redesign the high school experience. We need high school to be more relevant to the workforce today. We need to make sure that career experiences are integrated into that. We need to encourage more collaborative work and critical thinking in our high school. It's a really exciting bill. And honestly, we need somebody from the system in our area to be up there, keeping an eye on it, making sure that that high school redesign is done right.
All right. That makes a lot of sense. And one of the things about John Miller, and he was a good friend of mine, and so is his family, a good friend of Ann and ours. And one of the things I loved about John is he put people over politics. He put the interest of his district over partisanship. And there were a lot of issues that John would take on, and he didn't really care what the Democratic Party establishment thought. He tried to do the right thing, and that's why I thought he was a great state senator, and he's going to be missed. I want to thank Shelly Simonds for being with us. Shelly, you ran a spirited campaign. You've got a lot of spunk. You're feisty. You're taking on the machine candidate. Wish you all the best. We're going to have you back on. People want more information, Shelly. Where do they go?
They can go to my website, which is www.shellysimonds.com. And I really also very close to Senator Miller. He's actually the one who asked me to run for the House of Delegates, and we kind of ran a co-campaign with our field operation, and he'll be greatly missed.
He's a good guy.